Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the daily Rambam Shiur, lesson 186, Hilchos Bechorot, 8th chapter, and the beginning of Hilchos Shegagot, Aleph and Beis. Many years ago, in the old home, in one of the yeshivos, came once upon a time a yeshuvnik, a very wealthy farmer, and requested to meet the Rosh Yeshiva. And he has a very special request. Since his daughter is about to get engaged, she's in the Shidduchim season, as they say, she has reached Perek Isho Niknis, and God Almighty blessed him with lots of oisher, lots of wealth. He would be interested to find a match for her with one of the best and boys in the yeshiva. And indeed, he promised the Rosh Yeshiva, in case he will find somebody suitable for her, he will definitely take care of him with a nice and a decent donation to the yeshiva. But he made a condition that before he will make the decision, he would like to test the proposed boy. He looked at him, says, okay. And immediately he approached the best Ilui, the best Lamdan in the yeshiva. He introduced him to this yeshuvnik, to this farmer. And he says, yeah, here is the test. He took out from his bag a plate with a warm bagel and a challah, and he put it on the table, and he presented to him, invited him to join in this meal. The boy, he knew very well that without a knife and a napkin, it's not appropriate to eat. He's looking for a knife, he's looking for what to do. He's hesitant, and immediately he responds, this is not for him. He failed the test. So he goes and suggested him another boy, and goes the same thing. He's see the plate with the bread, and he's looking for a knife, for salt, for a napkin. He couldn't find anything. So that way he ran very quickly out of the inventory of the boys in the yeshiva, and he turns to the rabbi, do you have any other proposed guy? He says, yeah, And exactly at this point, one of the bochrim by the name of Pesach, he passed by, and he says he was not really actually a boy in the yeshiva, he was more a handyman and taking care of the needs of fixing stuff in the yeshiva. He turns to Pesach, he says, Pesach, I would like to introduce you to this gentleman. He's looking for a shidduch for his wife, and he would like to invite you for the meal. And he presents him the plate with the chalois, and without thinking twice, the boy pulls out a knife out of his boots, slice the bread. He found also in one of his pockets salt. He was totally organized, and immediately the yeshuvnik, he was so happy. He says, this is it. I'm very happy, and as far as I'm concerned, you earned your generous donation that I've promised you. The Rosh Yeshiva was a little bit in shock. He turns to him, he says, wow, I'm very happy that you found your basheret, but tell me how or what was your reason to choose this Pesach of a future son-in-law? He says, very simple. Every morning in our prayers, we say, in quoting a Mishnah of Maseches Zvochim, where it states all the korbanos, all the offerings, and it says, Abocher vehameser vehapesach. The way it is written is the Bechor ve'hamaser ve'apesach, the rule of the firstborn, the rule of Meiser, and the rule of Pesach. But since this Yeshuvnik, he was quite simple and his knowledge of reading was not the best, he used to read it a Bocher ve'hameser, and happened to have Meser in Yiddish means also a knife, and happens to be that his name is Pesach, so Kiddushim Cholim, the Kiddushim can go ahead and wish Mazel Tov for the future son-in-law. I was remembering this story since today we are concluding the 3 type of halachos. We started Sefer Korbanos with Hilchos Pesach. We continue with the halachos of Bechorot. And towards the end of Bechorot, today, our first chapter happens to be the last chapter of Hilchos Meiser. So at the conclusion of the Bechor and Maser and Pesach, I be happy to share this story with you listeners. And we're starting also Hilchos Shegagot, but first let's cover the last of the halachos of Meiser Behemo. So Meiser Behemo is when a person designates a tenth of his kosher animal towards Meiser. It can be done personally or by appointing a shaliach. So when a person appoints a shaliach, an agent, to do it on his behalf, there is a general ruling that an agent cannot really have effective fulfillment of mission if he deviates or does one mistake, which means as long as he will follow the instruction fully, so his action can be linked to the one who sent him. Otherwise, his appointment is not effective at all. So for that reason, when an agent, a shaliach, is making the meiser on behalf of the meshaleach, of the master who sent him, he can make no mistake, and therefore the tenth will be always the only one that will be meiser, even if he called to the 10th one by a mistake 9 and the 9th one he called 10 or the 11th 10. There is no way for a emissary to do any mistakes. However, a person that does it for his own herd and for his own behemoth, he is the one who is doing the meiser. So the halacha is that if he made a mistake and he called a animal that is not really the tenth, as long as the range of deviation was only one animal south or north, which means if a person by a mistake he called the 9th one 10th and he called the 11th one 10th, so though they are not really the 10th, they are only called by him, nevertheless, the status of 10 will somewhat applied towards them, and the treatment will be as similar as I would treat the 10th. So for example, let's say a person will start to count and he reached the number 9 and he called the number 9 10. So the 9th one will be treated as a meiser somewhat, in the sense that the only way to eat it, only if it has make sure that it has a mum, in order to prevent a possibility to take it to the temple for offerings, and this is the only way to consume it. Now, the 10th one will be, regardless whether he called it 9 or whether he called it 10, it will be treated as a meiser as well, It will be the real Meiser, regardless, even if you called it a different 9. Now, what happened if he called the 11th 10? So the destiny of the 11th will depend what happened with the 10th, whether he was actually silent by number 10. If he was silent by number 10, so in such a case, the 11th one will be turning to Shlomim. I'm sorry, in case he was silent by number 10, so the 11th one is not going to be treated as a 10th. However, if a person actually was calling the number 10th 9 or calling a different numbers, then the 11th one will be treated as Shlomim, partially in the sense that it will need Nesochim like Shlomim. The only difference that he won't be able to become a Tmuah, since himself his so-called exchange. The word of Tmuah is a mechanism that is enabling a person, if he says on an animal, this one will be exchanged to another animal, so the new animal that he was making the exchange will be treated as the original animal, and the original animal will have the same status. So in this case, though it will be Shlomim, but it cannot make a Tmuah like Shlomim. If the 9th and the 10th one, they exited simultaneously, so both of them will have to be eaten bemuman. Bemuman is in case the only way to consume them is only after they having a mum, a defect, a blemish. The same thing will apply if the 10th and the 11th simultaneously came out at once. A person after a defect, although ideally it should, as we have learned yesterday, it should be done 1, 1, 1, and only the 10th one will be Kodesh. However, if a person have exited them pair by pair, first Zug, one pair, or a triplet or a druplet can be by groups, and he was sanctifying the 10 groups, whether the group consists of 2, 3, 4, or 5. It is also a legally and a legit way to make Meiser. There is also b'diavad a legit way if he starts to count 10, 9, 8, 7, and so on. He goes in reverse, and number 1 will be the holy one that needs to be treated as Meiser. The final subject in this perek is regarding a term which is called minyan haroi. The concept of roi, literally translated, it means fit. However, this term was introduced to us throughout the Rambam series quite a few times. In that context, it is relating to a process that was not really finished. So despite the fact that a process was not finished, I won't disqualify all the components of the process. In other words, if a component of the process at the stage that he was participating in the process, at that time was a potential to the entire process to finish properly, that even though it was not completed, nevertheless, this component already achieved what he needed to achieve. We'll take a look how this principle will apply to the rules of Meiser. For example, if a person had 10 sheep and he started to count, and after he count, before he reached the number 10, let's say he reached number 5, and one of the people that he counted already have died, he should continue to count, although at this point only 9 are alive, but nevertheless, at the time when the process have started, that was a time that all the underlying conditions were perfectly fine. So for that reason, they will be kosher. However, if the one who died happens to be from those ones that were not counted yet, the one that's still remaining inside the room and they are about to leave, so those one who were counted, they were already fulfilled their duty and they will be exempt from Meiser any longer, because while the process have started, they were perfectly fine. But the one that's still remaining in the deer, in the room, they will be needed to join a future Meiser, a future group. There is another example that illustrates this principle. Let's say a person has a deer. Deer is a herd, a room where he is counting from. Inside the room, he has 2 gates, 2 door posts of exit. The amount of behemoths he have in each and every door, he has 19 behemoths. And 9 of them left from one door and 9 of them left from the other door. At the moment that each and every one have left, potentially was sufficient amount that remain to be their Meiser. So for that reason, he will take the last one, and from whatever door he will exit, he will be the Meiser, and all of them, even the group that left already the 9, they actually fulfilled their mitzvah, because they are considered to be minyan horo poitel. At the moment that they were part of the minyan is the count, while they were counted, at that time, everything, all the underlying conditions were roy, were fit for a perfect process. When it comes to the Meiser, a person can do it in stages. For example, if a person counts the animal and so far only 5 left the room, and he still has additional 5 inside, and suddenly Shabbos comes in, so he can continue after Shabbos from number 6 and on, and it will be perfectly fine. In a case where a person actually counted and some of the one who were counted already, it's called the menuim, the one who were exempt, jumped back to the room, and it's not clear who is who. All of them will be exempt, because as we have learned yesterday, any type of animal that is exempt, that was mixed with other animals, I will apply the rule of exemption to all of them. Same way goes the opposite. If an animal that was determined to be a Meiser jumped into a room of many other animals and it's not clear who is who, I will make sure that all of them will have a movement, only then they will be eaten, because otherwise there is always a chashash that a person is oichel kodoshim b'chutz, So in order to prevent from a possibility, from a chance that he's not Oichel Kodoshim B'chutz, I'll have to make sure that the only way that they will be eaten is only B'mumon. The second chapter of our lesson today is the first chapter of Hilchos Shegagot. Since there are different types of korbanos for different sins, some of them are called chatois, some of them are called ashomois, so we'll make a general order in the chatois itself. In chatois, there is one type which is called chatos kvueh, a consistent korban chatos. It is a offering that comes from a behemoth, animal, and this is an atonement of specifically 43 prohibitions of loisas, a negative prohibition that a person committed bishgogo, unknowingly. From those 43 averos, all of them, they are type of prohibition that had he done this avero b'mezid, the punishment will be kores. The 43 averos, 26 of them, they are arayos related, different forms of incests, ranging from prohibited relations with direct relatives, with behemoth, with an animal, or with a zochor, with a male. All of them, they are ranging, they are being added to 26. The rest of the 17, they are also can be divided into sections. 4 of them is avodah zorah related type of arayos, including Oy Vidoini and other type of idol worshipping. The secretion of Shabbos and Yom Kippur and Passover is 4 of them. 4 of them are diet related type of prohibitions. For example, if a person ate fats, certain type of fats, blood, noiso, and pigul. 5 of them is activity which is prohibited within the frameworks of the temple, which included a preparation of the incense and different ingredients of ktoires and so on that we have covered already in Hilchos Klei HaMikdash ve'Ha'ovdim Bo. So if the sin which was done bishgogo unknowingly is from the avodah zorah type, so the korban, the offering of the chatos, will be by whether it is a lame person, a kohen, or a melech, they will all bring a goat female, which is less than 1 year old. In the other 42 sins, so depends. The hedioit, a person, a regular person, will bring a goat female or a sheep female. A king who committed one of those 42 sins will bring a goat male, and a kohen gadol who committed one of those sins will bring a bull which is not going to be eaten. It's one of the porim hanisrofim. It will be burnt outside the machne. On the other hand, this is what we have learned until now. We covered chatos kvueh, a consistent chatos that consists for an animal, female, goat or sheep, or bull or goat male. However, there is another type of chatos which is called korban oile v'yored, a offering that goes up and down according to the budget and the economical state of the person who sinned. This, if he is rich, he will bring a animal offering. If he is poor, he will bring a bird offering. If he is very poor, he will bring a flour offering. Those type of chatos, which is oile v'yored, comes on very specific averos, and this is in case he was tomei and he entered to the Beis Hamikdash or ate something that is holy from the property of the korbanos. In the second chapter, the discussion is about the requirement that is necessary to be liable in a korban chatos. So in order to be liable of the korban chatos, the stipulation is that he must be in a state of shegag, of not knowing throughout the entire sin. If part of the sin he was fully aware, then he cannot bring a korban chatos. He is exempt from chatos. Illustration, we know that in order to violate the melocho of carrying on Shabbos, it needs to consist of two parts. Akiro, uprooting the object from a domain, and hanocho, resting the object into a different domain. So if a person at the time when he was doing the akiro, the uprooting, he was in a state of shegeg, and while he was doing the hanocho, suddenly he is mazid, or vice versa. So in such a case, he will be exempt from any korban. When it comes to defined shegagot, is regarding he may very well know that this activity is prohibited. However, if he doesn't know that this activity is associated with chorus, he doesn't know about it, this will be considered shegagot. However, if for example, if he knows that it consists of chiyuv chorus, in case he has done it deliberately, but he's not aware that he will be liable to a korban had he done it b'shegeg, this is considered mazid. It's not considered shegeg. There is another requirement that he must know specifically what type of sin he committed in order to qualify for the korban. For example, if there is two products, both of them are subject to a chorus. For example, there is in one can chaylev, and in the other one there is dam. Both of them happen to be a subject to isur chorus, and he ate one of them. He doesn't remember which one of them. Though it is certainly he committed a crime, but since he doesn't know which crime he committed, he will be exempt from a korban. The reason, since the Torah specified that the korban will be brought in case when a person noida loy hachatos, it is known to him the specific sin he committed. On the other hand, let's say if he knows what type of sin he committed, but he doesn't remember who he committed the sin with, he will still be subject, and the Rambam compares, let's say a person extinguished or lit a fire on Shabbos. So though it happens to be one lighting of a candle, but he doesn't remember which candle, he will still be liable with a korban because the specific type of aveiro he was aware. There is a situation when a person at the time of the sin had no idea that he's sinning at all. And years later, he discovered that he committed many sins. Example, a person who was a tinoik, a infant shenishbo, captured bein hagoyim, amongst non-Jews, and later when he grew up, he realized that many activities he committed throughout his life was actually forbidden. So then he will bring one chatos per each and every sin that he committed. When it comes to the averos, the prohibitions that he must bring a chatos for them, there is a term which is called a misasek, a person that while he was committing the sin, he had a different intention. For example, if a person happens to have on his tongue a prohibited fat, and he was wanted, or he was under with the intention to swallow his saliva, and together with swallowing his saliva, he swallowed the prohibited fats as well. It's called a misasek because his intention, deliberate intention, was not actually to eat the chaylev. So when it comes to all averos outside Shabbos, he will be liable. When it comes to melochos of Shabbos, the Torah specifically defines the melochos, meleches machsheves, that needs to be full, deliberately a intention of the person to do a specific maise. Otherwise, a person will be exempt from bringing the korban chatos. There is an interesting klal, an interesting rule. If a person was involved in a mitzvah, and while he was legally involved in that mitzvah, he committed an avero b'shegagot, he will be exempt from a chatos. Example, a moihel, a person who is circumcising children, who had 2 infants to circumcise. One of them was supposed to be on Shabbos because Bismanoi, the 8th day of the Shabbos, and the other one was Erev Shabbos. By a mistake, he circumcised both of them on Shabbos. He will be exempt from a chatos because he was operating birshus, in permission, and Shabbos by him at the time of action was pushed away. So though it is 2 general gufim, 2 general bodies, nevertheless he will be exempt. According to this ruling, we'll understand something very interesting. There is a person who shechts the Pesach on Shabbos, but will depend if the actual slaughter of the Pesach is done in a legal way or not in a legal way. So if, let's say, he slaughtered the Pesach sheloi lishmoi, not for the sake of Pesach, but we know that Pesach needs to have lishmoi, for the sake of Pesach, but he's done it mistakenly. If he done it mistakenly, we know that the kiro betos, it's fine, though Pesach needs to have lishmoi. So in such a case, he will be exempt from a chatos because it's not a sin that's subject to a chatos. On the other hand, let's say if he slaughtered the Pesach on Shabbos in a postul way, for example, for those people who are not allowed to eat the korban, or people who were not menuyov, they were not subscribed to the korban, since such a slaughter is not kosher, for that reason it's not a mitzvah, so he's not protected, and for that reason he will be chayov chatos for this korban. And the final halacha is regarding a person who is attempting to fish and he throws his net in order to bring fish from the sea on Shabbos, which is a prohibited activity, and in reality he managed to bring in his net a infant that he saved him from drowning, and together with some fish. Despite the fact that his intention to do a prohibited activity, given the fact that the results of his action brought over here such an activity that had it been done with action would be totally permitted on Shabbos, so this so-called retroactive permission or permitted activity will remove any liability of chatos from him. In fact, I've seen a very interesting in Dvar Malchus over here, based on the halacha, was used as a reference to a story that once upon a time was a person holding in his store wine that he was not paying taxes legally for the wine. Came a person and broke the bottles of wine, and the entire wine was spilled, and the owner of the storage was very upset. And while he is upset, the inspectors, the tax collector, came to look in his store merchandise that taxes were not paid for it. They didn't find anything. As a result, he was saved from a penalty that otherwise would be imposed upon him. And now the question was asked, since the person who was breaking initially all the bottles of wine, is he liable to pay for the damage? Or since as a result of his action, he was saved from a huge financial liability that would be imposed upon him by the authorities, should be exempt to pay? So amongst the poskim were an argument. Some wanted to bring a support that the person will be exempt from paying from the halacha that we have learned, that if a person was throwing a net to catch fish on Shabbos, a prohibited activity, and in reality he managed to pull a tinoik, an infant, to save him. So though his intention was not to save the tinoik, but turns out that's what was done, he will be exempt from the chatos because he was involved in a mitzvah. Same thing over here. The intention of the mazik was the terrible intention, but as a result he brought a toivo to the bailim, and therefore he will be exempt from payment. On the other hand, some other halachic authorities, they make a major distinction, because at the case of the net, simultaneously the same net that was utilized to a prohibited activity was at the same time doing a mitzvah and saving a child. However, over here, the time elapsed between the breaking of the battles and the subsequent later what caused him the exemption from the tax liability, it is a totally different scenario where it was not done at the same time. So there is two ways how to look at it, and I thought it will be very interesting to share it with you. I want to wish you all the best and good night.